a 6-minute snippet from a docuseries that was created to change the perception of the metal recycling industry by some people with some really big vision and capability. So we're gonna watch this 6-minute cut that came out of a whole season. So we wanted to give you some context for what that is. It's a lot of fun to watch. So we hope you enjoy this 6-minute cut from Repurpose, and then we're gonna come up and talk.
No, not yet. Don't cut this. You always got to roll, because by the time someone puts this on, someone's probably dimming the lights. They probably can't get the sound to work. So you always got to get a little bit of lead time on any kind of intro these days. Even on social media, they're maybe hitting their sound thing. So, and then you hit them with something big. I'm not sure people really understand how much time had to be committed to pull this off, how much money was going to need to be invested for John to pull this off. But that's him, man. He is 100% all in. So I've been working with John Sacco for over a decade. And the last 4 or 5 years were all about social media, brand build, building the Sierra brand. And then a few years ago, John comes to me and says, we're not going to worry about the Sierra brand anymore. We're going to build the industry's brand. You have to understand how audacious that is, because everyone is so focused on what they're doing in their business. And John said, no, we are going to build the brand for the metals recycling industry. And that's just a massive undertaking.
Let me tell you why I'm making this docuseries. This docuseries is about recycling, and the most fascinating part about it, it has nothing to do with the blue bin. Because 96% of all recycling in America has nothing to do with household recycling. It has to do with industrial recycling, from residual metals, from steel, copper, aluminum, stainless, from manufacturers, newspapers to recycled cardboard. These products that we use, that we don't even think twice about, are coming from the recycled industry. Your car, the metals, the copper wiring in your house, the hospitals, the bridges, the roads, the highways, the airports, all those metals, and they come from recycled materials to start with. Where we visit a steel mill and we actually get to see recycled iron being made into brand new steel.
But what John was doing is he was understanding that it's not just enough to build your brand in some situations. Sometimes you have to actually look around and go, what do I do for the entire industry that I'm involved in?
Repurposed is ultimately the narrative of our industry in the light it should be seen. Look, I've been in this industry enough years, over 30 years now. And when you really see what it is our industry does for the nation, for a nation, for nations all over the world, what you see it does, and the perception of it, they diametrically opposite, and we need to change that.
We're talking to people who are the experts in this industry, who do this for a living every day. And we're gonna have them tell the stories about our industry because they are part of our industry. Their hands are in it. And we're gonna focus on that, and we're gonna tell it from their perspective as well.
So I don't care what industry you look at, there is not an industry out there that does more for reducing CO2 on the planet than recycling. There's hands down. And there's nobody that could point to it and they could say, oh, we do for more. It's impossible.
You know, it's my goal that when people see this docu-series, they won't be able to unsee the fact how much the recycling industry impacts their daily lives. This industry is not only a necessity, it's vital for our environment, it's vital for our infrastructure, and it's vital for our everyday health.
Up next, panel discussion. Topic: Elevating an industry on Amazon Prime. Searching database for panelists. Panelist 1, Darren Doane, owner of Doane Creative Agency. Panelist 2, John Sacco, president and owner of Sierra International Machinery. Assigning hosts, Paul J. Daly and Carl Mountsier. Collaboration loaded, cue intro sequence.
Yo, that's a hot cut you just made.
We're stealing that one line you had, though, by the way. Oh, there he is.
All right, you can have it.
Thank you very much.
Check one.
Check one. One on two.
So you obviously very passionate about something that's very familiar to us, and that is understanding that your industry is looked at one way, and it should actually be seen in a different light based on your experience in the industry.
True, but we're also to blame for that.
Also very familiar.
So, you know, for decades our industry hid their head in the sand because they didn't want to be, don't, just stay under the radar. Well, that's what got us all the regulation, all the burden from EPA, OSHA, and environmental justice, which is coming down the pike, it's mostly to blame for our lack of not getting our message out there. That simple.
So what are the negative percent? I mean, like, I'm going from my understanding of the recycling industry. Scrapper is really the term that I think is the more common term that is used. Metal scrappers.
No.
Maybe having.
He took them.
Maybe having. I don't know what we're doing here.
All right, that's all right.
Good. Maybe some negative connotations.
Yeah, the biggest negative connotation would be that we're waste and we're junk. So I ask you this, would anybody in this room say gold is waste or junk? Raise your hand if you think gold is waste or junk. Of course, none of you are going to raise your hand. Why? Because gold has an intrinsic value and also has industrial use, right? So does copper. Copper trades on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Aluminum, London Metal Exchange. And recycled iron, well, that's the raw material for the brakes that go into cars in this auto industry. And to all the steel that goes into the car, the frames. The bodies of cars could be argued, a lot of it comes from integrated steel mills, but they have 20% recycled metal content in that new steel. So it is this connotation that cities, municipalities, regulators want to own our commodity, recycled iron, copper, and aluminum, because they like to call it waste. And that's why I'm battling this because I want an industry to survive, to be vital, right? It's got to be vibrant. And if you let the regulators take over, we're not going to have that. And I won't have an industry to work in.
What types of things, I think?
Maybe it's yours.
I think my pack's popping.
I think it's you. Let's see.
For Sean Smith, everybody.
Let's go.
Way to go, Sean.
I'm not the only
I think this one's good. There it is. Use that one.
He's
see.
just the problem fixer. Just the problem fixer. So, where was I going with that? Oh, so what happens if the automotive is in a situation where legislation is driving product right now and not consumer perception or consumer demand when we're talking about EVs and all these things that are happening? What happens if the regulators get control of the industry?
Well, if the regulators get control of our industry, it's problematic for the automotive industry. Why? I was at Toyota 2 Show's aluminum smelting plant in Troy, Missouri, okay? What do they do there? They take recycled aluminum and they make ingot and make molten aluminum for their next door Toyota Motors to make motor blocks and transmission housing from recycled aluminum. So if you wipe out the recycled materials industry with their burdensome regulation, where the hell is everybody going to get the metals to make the automobiles that we want to drive around? Now, EVs are coming, right? So they want to push more. Well, what the hell are EVs? What's an electric motor? Copper, aluminum, the body frames, aluminum. Where are we going to get it if we can't supply the consumers, the steel mills, paper mills, because paper packaging, look how much paper packaged products support the automotive industry. You know, if you get a car dealership and all those parts come in, what, cardboard boxes, that's made from recycled paper. So if you shut down the recycled materials industry, you're going to shoot the automotive industry right in the head.
That's nuts. So you're seeing this. You're like, I'm seeing this coming at us, right? From regulation to the way the industry is perceived to the way that that local municipalities are coming at it. Right. You're in the middle of a 3-year brand build, personally for Sierra. Like, you know that driving business reputation for yourself is important, and you then make this shift. And we kind of heard Darren a little bit talk about it, and I want to get his perspective deeper, but like, when did that, like, what was the light bulb moment for you?
All right, Darren and I have worked together for over a decade. And there's that old saying out there, you wish somebody would do something, and then you realize you're somebody. This guy here has been pushing me to be that somebody, and I finally saw this door opening into the marketplace, and I said, D, let's do it, because we need a strong industry so I can sell equipment into. We need a strong industry so I can sell my metals to.
Well, yes, but it was very much what I see here, which is when you first have a big idea, especially within your own industry, you immediately kind of reach out to people and say, let's do this, right? Or you kind of go to the top, and you kind of, there's almost like this inherent level of respect that we have for all the industries that we are in. As much as we want to be troublemakers and kick back against the norm, we still play within a particular game, and we want to make nice with people. But when everybody turns you down, and when everyone says no, when everyone says, why would you do that? Or if everyone says, well, maybe we could do that, but, and then they throw out some creative idea, you're like, wow, I'm never asking that person like ever again, right? And then, and you kind of sit there, and you go, shouldn't we just do this? Now, it's easy for someone like me to say, because I get to tell someone like John, we should do this, but that takes money. And I'm always focused on the money part, because to do something like that, it takes a lot of money. When you say you want to change an industry, I get calls all the time. People say, oh, we want to do X, Y, or Z. And I say, well, why? Well, if this regulation gets passed, we could lose $20 billion, as an industry this year. And you go, okay, what's your budget? They go, we got 15 grand. And you're like, right. you got a $20 billion potential, you got 15 grand, John was willing to say, you know what? I mean, I give him so much credit, because it's one thing to say you want to go pull things off. To pull big things off, you need money, you need commitment, you need that long-term vision. And John just said, you know what? If I don't have an industry, I will not be able to continue as a business. So he was forward thinking in that. There's other things that come along with that. Obviously, you guys are all been following content and how to create your brand and do all that. What was nice about having one big idea to go for all you content creators out there, it does create, it's the top of that funnel of content. So as long as you're documenting that journey on something big, it tells your story. And I think we got just as much value out of documenting the process as we did the final product.
Yeah, talk a little bit about like the creative process, because once you decide, oh, we have to change an industry and we have to tell the people about it, and it's a docuseries, now we actually have to create, like, we have to storytell this, right? Like, nobody's ever been like, that's a simple recipe for storytelling the recycled metal industry. We've done that 4 times,
Once upon a time, right?
Look, Darren has taught me something about creating content. You don't try to script it. You document first, and then you pull out from that. And you're the one who better explain it, but we've worked together. He'll come up with an edit. Season 1 of Repurposed is 4 episodes. They're 23 minutes long, and this is season 1. So we'd sit down, we'd go through the episode, and I always hate telling the guy who knows how to edit incredibly well, maybe this scene, we tweak it here. But the beauty is we get to work together, and we never are precious. And Darren, one of his biggest things is don't be precious.
What does he mean by that?
Tell us.
Well, nobody cares. So you have to really decide what your barometer is internally, creatively, right? Whose opinion do you get? Your coworkers, your mom? I mean, who do you get, on every project, I always say, by what standard says who? Now, a lot of time that's answered by who's paying for it. So there's a real easy answer from that, from a business standpoint. But once you're beyond that, there is something really fun about just trusting your gut. And when I say don't be precious, what I really mean is just don't think too much about this mystery person that doesn't even really exist may think about it. And so we've been able to build that relationship, which is, I know for those out there who are maybe on this side of it, the kind of comments you want back from people on any kind of creative project are those ones that really honestly feel objective. That to me, those are the best kinds of comments, As a creative, I know what it's like to give comments that are really creative driven, kind of what I would do. And so when people send me projects, I don't think about what I would do. I think about the project, and if I give thoughts back, that's what John is doing every time I send him, an edit. If he comes back and says, I love it, it's got the vibe, it's what I'm thinking about, like, we work like a band, and we have people around us, and we get in the room, and we start riffing, and we start playing a beat, and we try stuff. And so when you can put it up here and say what's best for it, right? You're not beating up people's ideas. You're not beating up people. You're beating up the idea. You're beating up the concept, the project. How do you make it just better? And so for us, again, we've worked so long together. There obviously is that, and I think it's funny that John, as long as I've worked with John, and some of you will probably know how amazing this is. John's never sent me an edit like, can you change that because I look fill in the blank. And so the fact that John's never given me a note back like about him, that's how you can trust notes. Yeah. If they're about the project, that's how you know. But like I've never ever had a note back like I look fat or I look this or I look that. So to me, we're already so far ahead of the game that's where we are at, that we're beyond vanity. We all know we look awkward and we're just moving on.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
Because now that you're 4 or 5 months since you released the first episode, February, May, 6 months, 7 months, yeah. What's been the response both inside and outside the industry at this point?
Well, let me tell you the first inside within my company. Now, I own the company, my brother and I. It was almost mutiny. People thought, what the hell are you doing?
Really?
why are you spending this money? Well, let's.
No, I mean, hold on, like borderline depression, because John knew what he wanted to do. He saw what he wanted to do. And when he says mutiny, like literally everyone said, we're not going to work if John keeps doing this thing.
Yeah, it was pretty ugly. It was depressing, but I knew what I wanted to do. So it gets released. So the impact is everybody went, wow, this is the best piece ever released on the recycled materials industry. And second, it was, wow, thank you. In Nashville, for example, at our big convention, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, our big convention, 6,000 people this year. I'm in an elevator. I don't have my name tag on. Some guy goes, hey, you John Sacco? I go, I am. He goes, hey, man, thanks for what you're doing for the industry. So what is that worth for my brand build? What's it worth for the industry? Here's where it hit home outside my industry. The brand build within the industry, people loved it. They loved our company because of it. Sales have been very strong because of it. But here's probably the biggest home run about it. The Speaker of the House, now I'm not going to get political on you guys because you got to hear this all the way through. The Speaker of the House, who's a Republican, and the Democratic leader of the Senate both watched a couple episodes. You know what the same reaction from both those people were? The leaders of the Congress,
House
right?
and Senate. Yeah.
They all said, wow, I had no idea what your industry did. Now that's the game-changing narrative I'm looking for.
Can we get Mike Stanton back in here and say that again? We have the recording. No, but the power of that, it only takes one right person to see it, to change their mind. And I know, I don't know if this is getting political or not, but oftentimes we have government leaders who are advised by a very small group of people because they're very busy, and this is just one issue on their docket. And oftentimes the people who are advising them are younger interns out of college that have a limited perspective on the overall industries.
And to that point, let's go further with that. When you look at the attacks on the auto industry, big pharma, oil, our industry, it's always a few people who write those articles. All it takes is one New York Times writer, journalist, if we can call him that, to write a bad article on our industry.
That was political.
And what happens? We're all scrambling. And here's what happens. What do? What's the reaction? Most of the time, everybody runs for cover. But think about the power. If the voice of the many stood up, shouted back, and even got more involved and start telling the story about what we do and why it isn't so bad. That transcends the one writer, because now we blow them out of the tub with one voice. And that's what I'm trying to get for my industry. Is it working? A little bit, but we're a long ways to where I want to be, but we got to start someplace.
Where do you want to be?
I want to be deemed, our industry, the recycled materials industry, first and foremost, I want it deemed essential. Okay? Because you know what? Another pandemic's coming, and there's going to be a governor of your state that's going to shut you down. And if your industry is not essential, well then you and your workers are not essential. And boy, does that hit home. We got to keep the supply chain full. And when you shut down the supply chain for the auto industry, what do we got? So the perception is you have to be deemed essential. That's my number one goal. Because another pandemic's coming. Rest assured, it's almost here, and we're going back into shutdown mode. I hope not, but if you're deemed essential, you get to keep on working. So that's my number one goal.
Well, we were having a conversation with a dealer in the room, and this person will remember the conversation, but they said, if and when that happens again, like the auto industry not just needs to be essential from a government perspective, but consumers, like everybody needs to be pointing at, because if that's the case, right? If that industry is seen as essential from everybody, the government, consumers, like every part, it probably means that we've done the work in front of that to be in good graces, to be seen in a beautiful light, to care for our communities, to know that it is essential. It is actually an essential part of our daily lives, right? Like you're not just like creating the tag of quote unquote essential business. There's so much more legwork behind that.
You just nailed that just perfectly. And the work that has to be done, believe it or not, to get deemed essential, you can do it in your state. You can get the governors, the assembly, the state senators, state assembly to come up with, hey, in this state, this industry is deemed essential. We got that recycling was deemed essential in probably 15, 20 out of the 50 states. But if we could get it on the federal level, we win. Because they can't shut you down. Because the government's going to pick winners and losers in the pandemic game. Walmart got to stay open, but mom and pop boutique dress shop got shut down.
Yeah, we actually saw a lot of that in the industry. So because automotive was deemed essential, but not all at the start, right? There was a big movement to that. And, as we think about making content, as we think about being in good graces, to be seen, as Kyle so eloquently put it, in a beautiful light.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I like the sound of that.
I feel like I'm hanging out with Bill Gates up
is
here
beautiful.
at this point.
I'll take that.
Talk about this next pandemic. But something from a messaging standpoint that I think is really fascinating, regardless if we hit another pandemic or so, if everyone's going to put their predictions, it can't be pulled off a second time. It'd be amazing if they try. But in the meantime, thinking about messaging, everyone's going to get hit, to stay on conspiracy theories and second pandemics. Everyone's going to get hit. Every industry at some point is going to get hit in regards to having to, more than just prove they're essential, they're going to have to prove that they're sustainable. They're going to have to prove whatever carbon footprint issue comes up. Everyone's going to have to prove. So when you say you have to prove to be essential, there's a deeper narrative there. And what I find fascinating is someone that trades in the idea of ideas and messaging is the auto industry is the number one most sustainable recycled product that humans interact with every single day.
Is that for real?
That's 100% true.
Well, if you look at the video, you saw a bunch of old automobiles being shredded, okay? Well, that metal's going to the steel mill. So when's the last time we saw a OEM? We see Mercedes put out, we use recycled plastics in our car. Well, dear Lord, 70% of that car, the steel, the aluminum, the copper is all coming from recycled metal. Let's celebrate that.
Your industry is the most. You're the most green product on the planet. Now, my point is, it may not seem like a big deal right now, but when they come for you to prove that you're valuable, you need to know. If I could give one thing that maybe you can just put in your back pocket is you are the most, how do we say it? I mean, you deliver the most sustainable recycled product to humans that they are dependent upon every single day. So if you see something on the horizon coming your way, just kind of think back to this.
That's kind of nuts because the narrative is we're not going to be that unless we're all EV.
100%. And your emissions are killing everything. It's like, no. Those cars are actually, that you're selling is actually what's saving the planet, and you need to be prepared for that narrative.
So the aluminum in an automobile most likely comes from recycled aluminum. When you want to talk, what does recycled aluminum mean versus virgin aluminum bauxite? Recycled aluminum saves 98th percentile of the CO2 emissions and 95% of energy consumption versus virgin. So why wouldn't we celebrate more aluminum, recycled aluminum in a car?
Well, you were also telling us a stat that like the majority of that aluminum is significant in age, just in like its origin story, right?
You know, they say something like 80% of all original aluminum is still floating around somewhere, be it in actual application or being remelted, and very little aluminum ever ends up in the landfill.
When did aluminum start being refined and used in product?
And recycled?
Yeah.
Decades ago.
No, you said original aluminum.
It's like 70. I think it's like if the way they chart it
I don't
is
know.
like,
I don't have that answer. I'd be guessing at this
I
point.
do. It's from like 70 to 80 years ago when we look at what was actually being mined in America, at least. From the
I love
people we
that you
talked
knew
to.
that answer.
What? Well, I do the interviews with Deborah, but it's just fascinating because aluminum. I mean, disregard the laws of thermodynamics for a moment. Aluminum is infinitely recyclable. It doesn't lose anything, right? Which is, again, it's fascinating, right? I mean, give it a million years, yes, I guess something will be lost, things fall apart. But so when you think of it as a resource, it's mind-blowing. And every single thing in a vehicle, right? Whether it's public transportation vehicles or personal use or military, all of that, you guys are in. Again, I get excited by that because I think the newest poll or whatever, people do all these research things, like 30 and under, whatever we're calling those, or 20 and unders, whatever group that falls into, say that.
I think we call them kids these days.
Yes. who now have the buying power, right? Say that that sustainability is the number one brand attribute that they look at in regards to who they're going to buy from, what they're going to purchase. Sustainability is the number one brand attribute. And so whether we like it or not, that's who's coming up, that who has the buying power. And so the idea, and again, we all know the power of narratives. I mean, we know the power of narratives because we've bought into, the world has bought into on some level, that EVs are better for the environment, okay? It's just not true. You may like it, right? But if you really want to do that deep dive from the standpoint of CO2 and emissions and what it takes and mining and all that stuff, like, no. Now, I like both, so I'm not offended with either. I like them both. But if you want to play this game, that side of it is the most sustainable angle that you can be coming at anything.
Look, CO2 emissions have no border. That's very important in our narrative, in our industry. And why is that? Because China has the largest, in their steel industry, the largest percentage of blast furnaces. That is using iron ore, coking coal, and the emissions from those steel mills, and in Russia, and in India, are incredibly damaging as far as CO2 emissions. In America, we have 72% of all steel mills in America are EAFs, electric arc furnaces, that used recycled iron to make new steel. There's a 60, in the mid-60s to higher 60%, and sometimes even 80%, depending on what the mill is making, of CO2 emissions and energy reduction of energy consumption with these mills. So let's say we shut it all down in America because we don't like what it's doing to America. Well, all those mills in China and Asia,
fire right up. Full
all
blast.
that CO2 gets up in the atmosphere, it gets in the jet stream, and it's still coming here to this country.
Wow.
So where do you want the least pollutive manufacturing of steel, aluminum, and copper and paper? Where do you want it? Where it's best, where the best environmental stewardship is right here in America. The best safety record. Have you ever been to a mill in Asia where the employees are walking around in frickin' sandals?
I haven't.
I haven't
don't think
been
any
there.
of us
Okay,
have
well,
been to mills.
they're walking
but you
around
might.
with sandals with molten aluminum, molten copper, molten steel. Are you kidding me?
Well, John, if I can jump in, season 2, you saw there at the end, I mean, to see the ship breaking that gets done here in America. As I'm sure some of you have seen some of the ship breaking stuff in Bangladesh and different areas, and I mean, it's heartbreaking what people will just bring these ships in, and it's one of the most feral, disgusting, violent, thing you've ever seen in regards to sort of human life and what they go through to disassemble all these ships. And to see shipbreaking being done in season 2 here in America, in Texas, to see the safety, the concerns, the thoughtfulness, we really do it right here. And so part of what we're also doing, at least in season 2, is showing just a whole other side that this is where you want things done, America. Let's go, USA, baby.
You can get a rile up in an auto crowd on that. I can tell you that.
Absolutely, yeah. We have 8 minutes left. Is the app going to work for this session for questions?
Yes, it will.
Maybe. If you've used the app for questions, if you want to flip some forward, we'll try to ask as many as we can. But I'd like to ask about storytelling.
Okay.
And obviously, what you're talking about is most of it's pretty easy to understand when you explain it. I don't know that it's an easy story to relate, though, when we start talking metallurgy and starting to talk about all these other dynamics. What story elements have you deployed to get normal people to understand? The shipbreaking one sounded like this or this, but like what storytelling are you leaning into to change the minds?
Okay, Darren and I, we don't want to use this, but I think for this audience it would be good for input, output, okay? What is the input? The input is recycled metals. What is the output? Bridges, highways, hospitals, schools, airports, you name it that is, okay, the output is what comes out after the input. The input is the raw materials, the iron, the recycled iron, copper. So the output is when you show what the input is, and we talk about it as recycled metals, that goes into the mill. And what comes out of the mill is the new steel, okay? And what is that new steel making? From tractors at John Deere, harvesting the food so we can eat, right? Going into a hospital so you can have an operating room that's full of metal. Have you seen the electronic devices in a hospital room? Have you seen in the beds and everything like that? Try building a hospital without rebar. You can't do it, okay? So rebar is made here in America, 100% recycled iron, okay? Your brakes on your car, Wapaka Foundry is making them in the Midwest, recycled iron. So we start with input, the recycled metals, and then we start telling the story. In season 2, we really get into the storytelling of what that output is so people can relate. And because when I found out, when you get Chuck Schumer and Kevin McCarthy both saying, I had no idea, well, John Q. Public is saying the same thing.
When you get those two saying the same thing,
That's pretty bold.
That's the truth. That is God's truth. They
that's
both said the same thing. I had no idea what your industry did.
I have a different. That's John's take on this, and I agree with it. My take's a little different, which is if you can find somebody excited and enthusiastic about anything, that's how you get people.
Yeah, John isn't much excited.
Right, and so I have to coach him.
we're still
up.
looking for that person.
I have to get John excited, like, hey, John, bring it up a little bit, you know. But it really is when you find someone, that's what we all want, right? If someone's super passionate about sprinkler heads and they can get you fired up about it, I mean, that's what's amazing. You know, that's what I've learned from you guys, right? Like when we first met, like, why are you so excited about this industry that I'm pretty sure I hate, right? And then within a year, and I think about that, within a year, like really becoming a fan and understanding, and you know, I know it's working because you've changed how I look at the entire automotive industry. So when I walk onto, I think when we met, I'm like, I don't ever want to walk on, you know, a dealer's ever again. I just
now
I
he's
don't
done
want
it like
to do
5 times in a year.
And I have, yeah, and now
He's
I do
texting
it.
us. Look what I.
No, I do it now, and I walk in, I talk with people, and I'm looking for all of you. I've been able to the last few years be able to meet people like, oh, I'm looking for that guy, I'm looking for that guy, you know, and it's opened my eyes to it, and that's probably 80% passion for the community that you represent. And so when you can get people to represent, you know, I mean, I think one of the guys you had on Clubhouse or something once said that, you know, it's, you know, a car dealer is like a politician, right? You hate all politicians except yours. No. My politician in my town. I forget who was saying it, but it really, right? It's easy to paint this picture, you know, but you guys have opened my eyes into just how many amazing people are in this industry. Makes me want to buy more cars.
That's right. Can we hear him?
Yeah.
Some applause for
Yeah,
that.
I met Scott earlier today. There's Scott right there. He's gonna send me a car. I'm buying a car from Scott.
This is us not being surprised.
Not surprised at all. I don't know if you guys knew this, but he did a whole session on how to sell cars outside of normal marketing channels.
Bingo.
And boom, there it went.
And I'm blown
interesting
away.
that you said that now you're buying more cars. I saw Ernie Garcia give a presentation probably 3 or 4 years ago at NADA at actually the Automotive News Retail Forum. And he presented, I thought they were, Ernie Garcia, when Carvana was on the upswing, I was like, oh, how's this going to go, right? And basically he presented a very data-driven approach that said, hey, here's the normal buying cycle for a used car buyer. And if we can make the process fun and easy, what if they just did it like 6 months more often or 1 year more often? He goes, we've just taken control over the size of our market. And you just reminded when you said that, like you kind of like it now.
I do. There's a question. I want to answer that question.
Pull the question back up here.
Okay. No, it was about how does the renewable energy, solar and wind play a part in the recycled metals? Okay. Can renewable energy sources like solar and wind play a greater role in the metal recycling process? Well, absolutely. We're doing it now. Here's the problem. The structure that you have on a wind tower is made from new steel, which is made from recycled iron. Easy. We take that. We do it in our own facility, cut it down, boom, ship it off to a steel mill. Solar, you can get the steel supports or maybe some of it's aluminum that holds the panels up. Here's the two problems with renewable energy. Glass panels are not recyclable. And in some cases, the older panels actually have lead in them. Bad. And the windmills, the blades on a windmill are made from fiberglass. Nothing you can do there.
Nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do. That's just going to get buried. So the structure, the infrastructure is all recyclable, okay? But it's the blades and the actual glass panels that are not.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, we've got, we're like down to a minute, so.
One more question. Let's get one more question.
Did we get one more question?
Yeah, there was one more.
What was the other question?
He's ready to go.
What can we do at the grassroots level to bring awareness of this issue? Was that question about the issue of, who asked that question? And was it about the recycled metals industry or the auto industry? Is that a how can we help? John?
Crickets.
I know how you can help.
We can watch Repurposed.
You can watch Repurposed on Amazon Prime and share it with 5 friends, right?
Well, you can get it into the classrooms. Let's start teaching kids at a young age that recycling is more than that stupid aluminum can in that plastic bottle, because that's only 4% of everything recycled in this country. And we start teaching kids that how did they get to school today, Mom? Well, they took the school bus. Well, what the hell is that school bus made from? Hey, that road you drove over, that highway you probably went on, guess what? Where do you think that steel comes from that builds that road? So if we can start educating early, but it's like anything else. What can we do? I think I love what you said about this convention or this conference, collaborating. The recycled materials industry and the auto industry, we need to collaborate more because we win when we do.
That's right.
That's how I feel.
Hey,
Amen.
That's a win. Hey, give it up for them. Thank you guys so much for coming on and
awesome to be here.
Giving us an insight into Repurposed.